was a different one for sure. It was actually really good.
Yeah, this one, like,
lots of disagreements.
this one was serious the whole time. And it wasn't like the deep, meaningful, find beauty in life thing. It was like, this is how the world works.
Why do you think this way?
Yeah. It was a lot of hard takes.
Yeah. And what's cool about it is what you guys will notice is because a lot of the times when I'm listening to something and I hear like an argument, I'm like, are they going to be able to are they going to be okay at the end?
Yeah.
Yes, we're okay.
We record the outro at the end, or the intro at the end. So here we are.
Also
Okay.
in the outro, you'll hear how like our moods go right back up because we're able to do that. It's a very civil disagreement. It's not even an argument. It's just a disagreement.
It's us laying out our opinions on things, and rather than sitting here and like finding a middle ground or like completely agreeing on each other's opinion or one person changing theirs.
Yeah.
We both laid out our opinions. They didn't match, and we both explained ourselves, and we're like, all right.
Yeah.
We disagree.
Also, as a second point to make about this episode and all the episodes, there will be another point after this. This is episode 26. At the end, we say 25.
Absolute idiots.
I'm pretty sure. Well, I would say it's mostly me and you just going along with it.
I totally was like, 25 sounds right.
Because I always forget where we're at when we record some in consecutive order.
Yeah, I've usually been so good with it. I think it's the first time I've fucked
It's like
up.
we recorded Sunday, Monday, and now today's Tuesday for all episodes for releases later. It's fucking
24, 5, and
it's
also
kind of
25
crazy.
again.
So this is 26, not 25. We know that we fuck up. Whatever. Move on to the next point. We're gonna start shortening the other than this one.
Yeah,
Obviously,
obviously you can see this one's fucking 2 hours.
we're gonna start on 28. We're going to start shortening the one-on-one episodes a little bit. Like, we're going to try to keep it to an hour and 15. If it goes farther, that's fine, but we'll try to keep it short.
We explain it in the end.
We
go
do.
into pretty good depth.
I mean, it's just...
But just as a disclaimer, we're going to try to shorten our one-on-ones just to make it easier on you guys consuming the podcast if you want to keep up.
We, again, go into the detail, and you'll hear the re-emphasis at the end, so whatever. I don't give a fuck.
It's 2 hours apart, so they're going to hear it twice.
What it is not tending to anybody's wants and needs. It's just... because we feel like
tending a little bit to them, just making it easier on them, but also easier
by
on
our
us.
Choice, not by them saying.
Of course, we're not caving into mass opinion.
That's the main point that I was getting at, and so
hope you guys have fun with this one.
Yeah, there was another point. Oh, but we're not shortening the guest ones. Like the guest ones are going to stay the same length because those are the like important ones. These are just like filler for 2 a week. But the other, again, one more point to add to that.
Point.
3A, 3B, whatever the fuck is. If we're going to keep doing 2 a week, but it may kind of fluctuate throughout the time.
Yeah, we will be considering...
It will always be one guest a week.
Yeah, but we will also consider like if we feel like we're
overwhelmed or busy.
We're overwhelmed, we're busy, or we're just like putting out a shit ton and people are like, slow down.
Yeah.
Then we'll do like one episode on 1 week with just a guest and say that one's like 3 hours. And we're like, that's probably good.
Yeah.
And then the next episode's like 2 hours with the guest. We do an hour ourselves.
So period, it's going to be one guest a week.
No matter what.
And maybe, we'll keep it as consistent as possible.
Yeah.
But just want to give all that disclaimer in the beginning so that
it
we
could
can
happen.
Yeah. And then now you guys can enjoy this episode of us disagreeing. We actually break up and get back together at the end. All right. We're going to start the episode now.
Boom, skitties,
Yes! Welcome to the
Nick and Tub
podcast. That was good. Again, I'm always fucking stoked on it.
I'm like, that fucking dumb podcast. I like it. It's fucking good shit.
That was so good.
Dude, this is the best fucking thing we've ever done. So, something I've been thinking about, and I don't think a lot of people really dive into it. They just kind of throw the word around, and it's going to get a little political. But
love.
we'll go down this road a little bit.
Oh no, I was saying love is what is thrown around.
Love.
No. I was fucking.
It's going to
get
political. Is when somebody says, "I have a right to this," or "Everyone has a right to this. This is my right." I don't think a lot of people understand what a right is. And so when someone says like, I have a right to free speech, or I have a right to bear arms, or we can go down the whole Bill of Rights.
That's a right.
Yeah, it's it's a right in a sense that the government cannot infringe upon it. It can't intervene and prevent you from doing those things. It's your right and cannot be taken away from you as long as you are an American citizen. But that's all it is flat out just saying you're allowed to be given the opportunity to do this, and no one is allowed to stop you. But as soon as you start saying it is my right to have other people do this thing for me, that's where it's no longer a right, because you are now making other people either do something for you or pay for something that's yours, when that's not how a right works. So like in this house, let's say you have in Nick's humble abode where Nick creates the laws of the land, you have the right to have a glass of water. That does not mean that I have the right for someone to get me water or for someone to bring me water, or I have the right that I should have water at all times.
Right.
And so when people say something along the lines of like, healthcare should be a right, that's not how a right works. You should have the right to get healthcare, and you should have the right to choose what healthcare you want from who you want. But saying that everyone should be given free healthcare as a right is not how it works. Same thing with college. When someone says free college should be a right or education should be a right, you have the right to pursue an education. You don't have the right for other people to educate you, nor is it like your right for a doctor to perform on you.
Right. Well, I guess what they're saying is that it should be that way.
And I get that, but it's not a right. And so if someone should say like it should be like a benefit or like a privilege or something along those lines, then sure. But people tend to conflate those words together and act like they're the same, and then get pissed off when someone like me goes, I don't think free healthcare should be a right. Do I think it would be nice to have free healthcare? Of course, I think everybody thinks that. But once you start saying like, I think the government should pay for everybody's healthcare, what you're saying essentially is, I think the government should take more money from everybody, sum it up together, and then dish out free healthcare to everyone, when all those other people didn't sign up for this quote unquote right that is suddenly taking more money out of their paycheck that they're living, like scraping by off of.
Yeah.
And so like, it just frustrates me when someone says that, or like, you know, a woman's like the right to get an abortion, that can be a right, because like, you shouldn't be able to be stopped by the government to, you know, quote unquote, do what you want with your body. Right. Just like how, like, if your neighbor wants to, you know, if your neighbor is gay and wants to marry a man, they should have the right to do so. No one should be able to infringe upon them and prevent them from happening. And that's why, like, it's called gay rights when we're talking about the entire, like, legalization of gay marriage. Like, that should have never been illegal, because that was literally infringing upon people's rights. Because the government was going out of their way to stop somebody from doing something that caused no harm to others. And so that's something
like you have a right to make a choice.
Yeah, you have the right to not be stopped from doing something that is for your own
your choices, your own personal choices. And people just get that whole idea confused. The whole thing of it should be a right for free education, I don't understand that. I don't think people really understand what has to go into that.
It's once other people have their pockets dipped into, where it's no longer a right.
Yeah. People think that they should be able to walk down an alleyway and have people holding out valuables, and they should just be able to take them out of their hands for free whenever they want.
Yeah, because it sounds
ridiculous. It's their right to take it.
It sounds ridiculous when you put it that way, but in reality, if you switch out like the idea of valuables rather than having like someone's watch or jewelry, and instead it be education, which arguably can be said as more valuable.
Yeah.
Suddenly it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
But like, I actually had this as a debate in my economics class in college, where the professor split us up, and it was on people who thought free education should that college should be free, and people who didn't think college should be free. And I was on the side that I don't think college should be free. And there was it was actually split pretty well. It was split 50-50. And a lot of the people arguing against the point that me and whoever of my classmates stood on was they were arguing about how expensive college is. And I was like, I think you think that I say college shouldn't be cheaper. I totally think college should be cheaper. But I don't think it should be free, because I think that just as high school is totally taken for granted, nobody gives a fuck about it, and everybody goes because it's free and the government's like, you have to do this. And even though you don't actually technically have to, you can drop out. But society as a whole is like, this is free education. This is, you get it up until you're 17, 18, and any good parent's like, I'm not letting you drop out and affect your future that drastically. I argue that's how college would be treated as well. The bachelor's degree would most likely become, or the associate's degree, however much college will be free, whether 2, 4 years, 6, 8, whatever, would become the next high school degree. Because then the same parents would be like, okay, rather than just saying you have to go to school till you're 18, now it's you have to go to school till you're 22. And then bachelor's degrees aren't something that you have to invest in. It's not something where you can say like, well, you don't have to be here. Like this is a university, you're paying good money to be here, and you're specifying in an area like you're supposed to take this serious. I argue just how high school classes are filled with those kids who don't give a fuck, who are just there because their parents make them, and they really disrespect everything.
The exact thing that I told you about with that math class. With the fucking kid who was cheating. Like if he's getting financial aid, like he's still paying into it and still doesn't give a fuck. So if it was free, I totally get that argument.
Yeah, and so if it was free, then there wouldn't be financial aid because you wouldn't have to be paying for anything. Right. It would just be like high school, and I think there'd be a shit ton more of those kids in those classes, and it would devalue everything.
Yeah, and yes, like 100% right. I think if it were to be free, because I think if college was free, there should be strenuous testing that allows you to get into like colleges or classes where you have to go through like levels and tiers in order to be accepted into that school. Because I mean, aside from that, you got rich fucking people who are just, they have all this money, their kids go to the school, and now you got all the stuff where people are like being caught up. Yeah, the bribery that's and they were just going to get free degrees so that they have degrees, but really they didn't do anything to get there. Meanwhile, there are people that actually try, and
I argue that shit'll never go away.
But I definitely 100% am on the side of like college should be cheaper. College should,
I think it should be. I think it should be way more accessible and less crippling.
You should not be in debt the rest of your life trying to pay off your college tuitions, your grants, your whatever the fuck you got, your loans
with interest rates that make it almost impossible.
Literally, like remember that tweet that I was telling you about, that guy, which it was probably exaggerated, or I don't remember.
It sounded a little hyperbolic, but
there was probably not an exact science behind what he was saying, but it was essentially that he had
the most of the money he had paid towards his college degree over several years was just towards interest.
Yeah, it was like his actual $90,000 in debt over 3 years. I've paid $1,000 each month, and now I'm like $87,000 in debt. It's like after 3 years, and honestly, maybe that's true. Who knows? Maybe he wasn't paying enough. Maybe he was just paying
dumbass loan, but that's true,
or paying off just the interest, or whatever the case may be. But like, I have an ex who is, she went to UCLA, graduated from there, and then went to Ohio State, and I believe graduated from there. I don't really know too much after that, but like she, from what I know, it has an insane amount of debt. And it's just like, and I don't know the number, but I just know that like she's going to be paying that off for quite some fucking time. She's got a plan, so good for her. And she's got a killer fucking idea of like what to do with her life. So she's got it worked out, but it's going to take her a long fucking time. And I can't imagine being fucking 60 years old, about to hit my, I don't know, retirement. I'm assuming at 60 I get to retire. Anybody for that matter.
Bill.
And still having to fucking foot that bill.
Like, yeah, exactly. And especially when you hear from generations before us about how cheap college used to be. Like especially when
How
you hear
cheap
people,
everything used to be.
yeah, but college in particular, like I get inflation and I get like, oh, 5 cents don't get you milk and bread as much as it used to type shit. But when it comes down to like, yeah, I went to USC and I paid like $1,000 a semester. It's like, holy shit. And that was like 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like now it's outrageously inflated. And so, yes, it should be more accessible. Yes, it should be cheaper. But once you make something free, no matter what it is, it loses its value to the people who it's given to.
Yeah, that's why we're going to start charging for this podcast.
For a feature?
No, just anybody that wants to listen, you got to pay a subscription fee. Because it's starting to lose it's losing its value so much. That's why we're doing shorter episodes.
But like if I wore a white t-shirt to a party, okay, yeah, we'll use a gray t-shirt for the sake of context. If I wore a gray t-shirt to a party and told everyone I got it at Goodwill for $1, it would add to the atmosphere of who I am to those people, especially people who aren't close to me. And then at the same time, if I told them I dropped $500 on the t-shirt and made up some elaborate scheme about why $500 is anywhere justifiable, it would do the reverse for my overall like persona to them.
Yeah.
How my presence impacts their opinion of me and their behavior around me. And suddenly like an outfit that looks the same exact way that I could have portrayed it as a $10 outfit or a $1,000 to $1,500 outfit, you get treated way, way differently. Just like if I were to walk up to someone and be like, hey, I made this like wood sculpture. Like I was whittling away at wood and I made this like picture of a fucking parrot and sculpture of a parrot. And I'm like, hey, I don't want this. Turns out I don't like it. You want it? Give it to you for free. Most likely someone will be like, I don't want this. No, thanks.
Yeah.
What am I going to do with it? Right. But then as soon as you go, hey, I've been selling this thing for like $700, but I'll give it to you for $250. So I'll be like, fuck.
Yeah.
There will be someone that will buy that shit.
See,
and it's the same
product.
parrot. And if someone were to turn around and try to resell it, they wouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
Because people are like, who the fuck is this guy? Why do I want to buy his work?
That perfectly plays into weddings and what I charge in my packages and whatnot. And when I first started, I did a wedding for like $400. And I remember telling people that, and they're like, "You did what?" And I was like, "What? Like 100?" It was like a 4-hour wedding. I did it for $400, and it was just like, you are underselling yourself a lot. I'm like, imagine trying to ask somebody.
You're like, that's 100 an hour. What do you mean?
Right. And I was like, imagine trying to tell somebody like, pay me more than $100 an hour. Like that's kind of hard. But with weddings, you have to remember that this is what they sign up for. Like weddings are expensive.
It's the economy of the industry.
Even with the prices that I charge now. Well, to continue on the point of like charging that cheap, it's like the friend that hired me for that wedding, she knew what my products looked like. She loved what I did and she enjoys her wedding photos. So really that was nothing to her. But to some people, when they would hear like, oh, I charge $400 for a wedding, they're like, oh, I'm not hiring that guy. He must not be that good.
It must be cheap work.
Yeah. And now it's like, I have a price that I still find fair.
But
like
competitive.
I'm like, no, that's cool by me. Like, I'm okay with my prices there. And people are like, you're still charging too little. And I'm like, I understand what you think, like with LA and bigger photographers and whatnot, and I do this stuff fairly well, at least I feel I do. And people love my work and I can charge more, but I can't imagine asking somebody to pay me $400 an hour.
Yeah.
I can't.
Which is nuts.
I can't. It's just, but I have to take into consideration, and this is where this plays into anything, like you said with the parrot sculpture. Like if you charge $5 for one and $200 for another, people value things differently. Obviously, like, oh, if it gets chipped, it was just $5, right? Which is why, like, even with my electronics, if anything gets a scratch, I'm like, God damn it. and like my day is ruined for that entire day. But fuck, there was a grand point that I was getting to with the photography.
Just like the overall value and how it's viewed.
Yeah, it's like the cheaper that you are, even if your work is great, people won't value it as much.
Because people are so used to price correlating to quality.
I know shit fucking like it's not like just photographers or videographers, but people who make like
mediocre stuff.
Yes, we'll call it mediocre. I can't call it shit. Art that is just like, okay, that's like basic, that charge 3 times what I charge. And that's what I was saying is when I think about charging, people think, okay, I'm paying X amount of money for photographs. The photographer travels to the location, works all day, doesn't just do photography. At least I don't. I do everything. I make sure they stay happy because they have to look good for the photos.
Of course.
After all the work that I do, the fucking sweat and the just absolute backache that I put into it, I then go home that day, and for the next however long it takes me, sometimes it takes me 3 to 6 weeks, sometimes it takes me a little bit longer. Sometimes I was able to nail like 400 photos I edited in a day. Sometimes that just happens, but I have to sit through all that editing, and I have to make sure that it looks good, and it's like I'm making sure blemishes aren't, all this different shit. And then after I do make all of that money, I have to pay taxes on that money.
Yeah.
So I don't make, let's just call it
money that's handed over to you.
Call it a number of 1,000. Like I make $700 because I have to put 300 of it away. And it's like, and then I had to put the gas in my car and the food for that day. So let's just call it anywhere from $650 to $600. And it's like, and I have to put that into my gear. So let's call it negative fucking money because at that point,
$2,000.
at that point, like, and so when it comes down to the value of things, I was actually just at breakfast with Kat this morning, and we were looking at the art on the walls, and probably no bigger than that frame, so like a 12 by 14 inches.
Yeah.
$750 for something that I know did not take, like you can look at it and be like, okay, come on now. Like that didn't take that long. You can tell it didn't. And people buy it. And I'm just like, there's no fucking way. Like a painting, like a badass fucking painting. Yeah, I'd put money into that because you can see all the small detail and things like that.
Yeah.
But this was a very,
it's abstract art type shit.
It was abstract art. There was little ones that were probably like 3x5s for $250.
That's nuts.
And I know they made that in under an hour. And it wasn't that hard. And like, I'm not bashing it, but there's sometimes when you can look at something and be like, that's a lot of work versus that's not a lot of work.
Even if they made it in 2 hours, it's $175 an hour for painting.
Yes. No. $250. Not
$250, not $350. Oh, so okay. So
$125. But regardless, it's like, and then there's the argument of like, well, who are you to say you charge this for your photography? It's like, yes, I understand, but like you were at home, took a piece of, like when I think about the work that goes behind something like that.
I don't even think you need to dive too far into this. Like wedding photography compared to an abstract art painting that's 3x5, like, come on.
Right. And so
it's pretty explanatory.
I guess, yeah. And it's just one of those things where it's like, you just kind of look at it and go, it's not my taste, and you walk away because there were people looking at this stuff, and I was like, you look like you want to buy that.
Like other people will forever determine the value on something,
of course. And
so, like, what could be, the good old saying, "One man's trash is another man's treasure."
Right.
It's very prevalent in art.
Yeah.
This time I'm going to need you to remind me, how did we get to the point of money correlating value? Because I was talking about college and how
I did it. I used my brain, and Nick. I sent you a signal,
you for reminding me.
And you picked up on it.
And how it'll lose its value. That's us going on a long ass tangent to prove the fact that like if college were to become free, even if it was just an associate's degree, the value of an associate's degree would go down the drain.
Yeah.
You would look just like a high school graduate if you had an associate's degree. And a bachelor's degree would look like, oh, you just went to 2 years of college. Like you just paid for 2 years of college. That's it. Like, I want someone with a master's. And it's, that's why I'm like, I don't think that it should work that way.
Yeah, because
Healthcare,
it shows dedication if you actually pay the money and do the time and do all the stress and whatnot. And it's like
and
you really
it
wanted to do this. You did
puts
everything to get here.
a smaller amount of people that come out.
Imagine
with
college being free and the dude that was cheating through everything was a doctor that you saw in 8 years.
Dude, yeah, seriously. Like, it also comes down to the ethics of the people that you're putting in the workforce.
Right.
Like, these degrees are valuable. They open up big opportunities for jobs.
There aren't idiots, and I'm talking actual idiots that don't care. They just go to college because they can collect their financial aid that become doctors. They don't, because they don't have the fucking...
I wouldn't say doctors.
I'm giving an example. I'm giving an
That get a
extreme
degree.
example.
Say they get a degree.
Well, no, what I'm getting at is... yes, obviously you have to get the grades in order to become a doctor. You have to do all the different steps, but you also have to pay the crazy amounts of money to get in, right? And I'm giving I'm giving an extreme example of just this idiot that somehow cheats his way all the way to the top. And because college was free, there was nothing that really stopped him. And then that guy's your doctor in 10 years. That's what I'm getting at. There's nobody like that. And because college isn't free, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, with I'm not even going to touch the doctor part, but with any degree, let's say
extreme example.
No, I know, but I'm not even going to touch it.
Yeah.
Let's say we'll lower the tone and say architect, right?
Okay. That's still really fucking difficult.
No, I know. Architect, civil engineer, something that you can at least get a job with a bachelor's. Mm-hmm. The dude that half-assed everything and pencil whipped his tests is going to be the guy that's going to help design your bridges. Right. And fuck that.
And then once you fall off that bridge, going to the idiot doctor.
Right. and the whole once it becomes free, it loses its value. And that's shitty. Of course, people should, if humans were perfect, we'd be able to objectively look at something and determine its value purely off that rather than money being a factor. But we're never going to get rid of that. And so you're going to have to learn to work with it rather than against it. And but I don't think that applies to healthcare, because if healthcare became free, I think people would I do think people would treat it with a little less worth, just because if healthcare was free, I would go to a doctor's checkup for a stupid thing. Mm-hmm. I have a hangnail that's just killing me, can't get rid of it. Mm-hmm. Hey doc, when are you open? I think shit like that would probably happen. I don't think everybody would do it, but you hear dumb shit like that from RNs all the time about people who came into the emergency room with some minor shit. I have a headache because, I took too many fucking Advil pills and, now I'm freaking out. And it's you took 2 over the normal. Why are you here? Shit like that. But when it comes to healthcare in an overall sense, if it was free, I think it'd be a fantastic, position to be in with our country. To have people who are in serious positions.
I don't know, because Canada's healthcare is free. And one of the things that I'm
talking about being free without sacrificing value or quality or wait times or any of that shit.
So something that'll never happen.
Yeah. Honestly, right. I won't say never, but it's super, super hard to get to.
In a utopia.
Yeah, right. Yeah. At least one leg of the
because what I was going to get at with Canada's healthcare is it's free and everybody's like, oh, that's wonderful. My stepmom's aunt completely cured of cancer, didn't pay a penny.
That's awesome,
and that's great. But I don't know how long that took, because I didn't ever ask.
Yeah,
but
one of the things with transplants or any type of thing
on a wait list of 8 months, dude.
Yeah, people who need hip replacements, which are pretty fucking urgent, are on long wait
Michaela
lists.
Peterson, Jordan Peterson's
daughter.
Yes, I think it was her, and I think for her hip transplant that she had to get, or hip replacement, whatever you want to call it. She actually came to America for it because it was a 6-month wait in Canada.
Imagine needing a kidney.
Right. That's the point. So they go elsewhere to get the kidney. I think something that's urgent, they're going to put at the top. But if it's something where they're if we can push you back, we're going to. Yeah.
I think he's a pretty controversial figure. And so I'll state right at the beginning, I don't agree with everything this dude says. But Ben Shapiro, I think, put it very...
Ben Shapiro, after that episode that I listened to, I was like, good God,
Which
this
one?
guy, the one on Joe Rogan's.
Oh, I don't think I heard his on Joe Rogan.
You should. It's fucking good. And I
Really?
did not know Ben Shapiro thought that way. Like,
On what topics?
gay rights.
Oh, I don't even want to fucking know what he thinks about that shit.
Oh, he's 100% against it.
Oh, I bet he is.
100% against it.
See, like I said, there's a lot of shit where I've heard Ben Shapiro give an opinion, and I'm like, wow, that was bad.
He doesn't care if you are. Okay, I don't want to quote this because I got it a little mixed up. He doesn't care if you are gay, but I think he doesn't believe that you should be married if you're gay.
Yeah,
Like that is strictly for, and I'm restating that I don't recall exactly what he said.
That's a stance that a lot of religious people take
Which is
marriage is
crazy.
That marriage is a holy, like a holy connection and should be treated as sacred and should be only for a man and a woman, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I don't think your religion invented lifelong bonding of mates. I don't think your religion invented marriage. And so like, I think you don't get to decide. But besides the point, Ben Shapiro put it very well when it came to healthcare, when he said that healthcare has three things. There's three factors to it: affordability, quality, and availability. And you can only have two out of three:
availability,
affordability, and quality. So we have availability and quality, but it's not affordable.
Yeah.
And Canada has affordability and quality, but it's not available.
Huh.
And so if you could make something affordable and available, but it's not good quality.
Yeah.
And so I like that standard, whether or not it's 100% accurate. There's exceptions.
That's fair because like I have an affordable healthcare plan and it's constantly available, but it's fucking trash when it comes to like if I actually get injured or the doctors that I'm able to see, not that they're trash, but it's like I have a small list and like the quality isn't as expansive as something that you'd pay like 3 times the price for. So I agree to that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and so I like that idea of it. That's where you just kind of have to, if that rule is true, and this hypothetical we'll say it is, you have to find where you want to sacrifice a little bit to gain a little bit in another area. Like how much of availability and quality are you willing to sacrifice in order to bring the price down? And that's a whole touchy subject on whether or not people think the government should supply it or you think private companies should supply it. All that shit. That's where I stopped getting into it because I don't know shit about the private healthcare insurance companies and how much they fucking gain a profit. I don't know.
I think there are definitely improvements that need to be made in multiple different areas, but I don't have any ideas as to how to get there. Yeah, it's just like some of the things like health insurance, for example, and I know this firsthand, is once I got off my dad's health insurance and I was like, I have to pay for my own. It's like $118 a month because I was making at the time like $31,000 a year. Mm-hmm. When I started the job that I have now, no help. I get no financial aid through any of these
out of the threshold
completely. I stepped over it and it went up. It doubled.
Yeah.
And so now I pay, and that's just for the health insurance part. I pay like $250, which is cheap, but what people don't understand is my fucking plan is trash.
Yeah, if it's cheap in price, it's cheap in quality, right? Like how most things are.
And so like it's $250 for that, and then $75 for like fucking life insurance and like a couple other things like a dentist plan, which I haven't even gone to a dentist with this plan yet, and I'm fucking scared of what they're gonna tell me. Like they're gonna be like, oh, it's like $800 just to see a dentist. Like I have no idea what it's gonna be. My copay is $75 fucking dollars. That shit is rough.
Yeah, and so and that's the thing. Like I think that's the overall goal of anybody who's proposing healthcare improvement is like for people like you who would consider like, would you consider yourself middle class or lower middle class?
I'd consider myself middle class.
Yeah. And so for the average American to be able to not have to like save up paycheck after paycheck just to go to the dentist and get work done, like that, I don't think you could find a person who's sane and empathetic who would be against that. Mm-hmm. I'm
just saying more affordable would be nice. Like knock off $50, $100. That's fine. I'll still pay into it, like whatever. But I just like with the bills, I was going over my bills yesterday and just like putting new numbers in where they need to be put in. And I'm just like, that's kind of like, if I didn't have the job I had now, that's not affordable at all. Like by any means.
No, and that's why they have the financial aid threshold. Once you start making less, then government chips in, which is nice. And that's the thing. Like, I think
they're like, hey, you look like you can just barely scrape by. See you later, financial aid.
So we're going to stop helping. And that's the thing. Like, personally, like, I'm a big proponent of capitalism. I know there's a good chunk of people our age that are against it. But
that word also gets thrown around a lot. So I need like an exact definition of what capitalism would be.
And I'm going to give butchered definitions. We can actually Google better ones, but capitalism is basically like the market controls the prices of everything. So supply and demand is basically what controls how much shit costs and how much you're gonna how much you have to put in. People have to work and they get paid based off how much work they put in, rather than everyone getting the same pay for different jobs.
Right. An economic and political system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit rather than by the state.
Yeah. And so the cool thing about capitalism is it drives innovation. Capitalism creates huge competition between companies, because the companies are, like it said, what drives the industry rather than the government. And so if I have a company selling gummy bears and you have a company selling gummy bears, we're selling them, both at the same price. So I need to find an edge on you in order for people to want to buy my gummy bears over yours. Because if I charge, let's say we're selling giant gummy bears to make it easier on the hypothetical. If I charge $5 for my giant gummy bear and it costs me like $3.50 to make it, I can't, and you charge $5 and it's the same cost for you. I can't start dipping lower and start charging like $4 and then only making 50 cents profit. Because if I charge $4, some people are going to come, some more people, like more of your customers are going to come to me, but not enough to make up for how much I'm cutting off of my price. And so rather than sitting here and you and I going back and forth on what we're going to charge to try to compete, I, get my gummy bear scientists in the lab and we create a new flavor.
I want to be a gummy bear scientist.
I'm glad you're partaking in this conversation. But we create a new flavor. Like, let's say the clear pineapple flavor hasn't been invented yet. So my company comes out with that. And, like brand new clear pineapple, flavor, and a shit ton of people start coming over to my company, right? I'm getting a ton of your customers, and I can even charge $6 for that one, and people will still buy the shit out of it because it's something I have and you don't. You're immediately going to find a way to make your own clear pineapple gummy bear to be able to compete. And then on top of that, you're going to come up with a sour green apple gummy bear with like sugar crystals on the outside of it. People are going to be like, oh, fuck, Nick's company is the only one that has that. I'm going to go get that one. And so then everyone comes over there. You can charge $7 for that. And now if I want to bring customers over and compete with you, if I can't do it,
hat on yours.
I will even past innovation. Like if I want to compete with you, maybe I knock my pineapple gummy bear down from $6 to $5, like the rest of them. Be like, oh, crazy sale. My special edition one is now the same price as all my other ones. And people are like, oh shit, I'm gonna come over here.
This is perfect example. Like I'm now like, I know what capitalism is to an extent, but you did very well with that.
This is exactly how it works, and it's why. And if there was no need for competition, if the government was like, you sell your gummy bears at $5 a piece and that's how much you sell it for, if the government tells you what your prices are going to be, then I would have no incentive to go create a new gummy bear flavor to then try to outmatch you, because as long as we have loyal people, then like, why the fuck would I do that? Because especially if it's going to cost me money, because that's the thing, research and development and testing costs money.
So what's the term for what you're explaining with the government?
It's basically like a spectrum of how extreme it gets. And then there's socialism, where the government will provide, will take your money, and not all of it, and then spend it where it deems fit, but a ton of things are free. So like it would be free education, free healthcare, free like sexual healthcare, like abortions and scans and all that stuff. And the government would then also like, we'll say like certain foods are free and stuff like that. It's more government involvement. And then the extreme on the other end is communism, which is government controls the entire market, and everybody gets like the same paycheck. It's total wealth redistribution, basically. There's no like crazy billionaires at the top. There's no top 1% that Bernie Sanders loves to fucking
Pretty good.
nail down all the time. Everybody would get paid the same.
Yeah.
But then that is where, the initial response to that is, where comes the incentive to then try to do anything that takes a lot of work? Like, why would I be a doctor? Like, say everyone makes 60 grand a year, right?
Yeah.
That sounds great for everyone under 60 grand, and that sounds awful for everyone above it. Why would I want to go be a surgeon for 60 grand when I can be a warehouse worker, what I'm doing now, for 60 grand?
Yeah.
And it takes out that competition factor completely. And there's nothing owned privately. The government owns your house. The government owns your car. The government owns everything you own. And there's usually, with most communist countries, huge corruption and tyranny. There's usually a dictator. They usually love to execute who they deem fit, any type of rivals. They even have communist countries where they're framed as like a democracy, but the tyrant who's in power currently controls the election and always wins. I think that's how it was for either Russia or China.
I was gonna say, hasn't
it's one of those things where it's
power?
like, oh, like for this instance, like Putin won his election for the 10th time in a row.
Yeah, he
wow.
won it. Yeah.
Great job. You tied everyone else's hands and arms together and then you won the
And
race.
slit their throats while at it.
Good job.
You
But, like,
evil fuck.
exactly. It's this mask of a fair like republic or democracy, but it's nothing near that. And actually look up the definition of communism and socialism. Why not? Just so we can actually have a clear cut foundation, and rather than going off what my flawed memory presents.
Jesus Christ. A political theory derived...
Which one's this one?
Communism.
Okay.
A political theory derived from Karl Marx, advocating class war and leading to a society in which all property is publicly owned and each person works and is paid according to their abilities and needs.
And yeah, that's Karl Marx was, I believe, born in the U.S., was a USSR citizen and came up with the Communist Manifesto, one of the most popular books ever. Whenever you see the hammer and sickle, that's what it represents.
Yeah.
And so, like, for instance, America. We are a largely capitalist country with some socialist programs. Police, firemen, roads, public transportation, healthcare, all that shit. Like when you financial aid, Medicare, all that stuff. That's all socialist programs, but the market in itself is primarily determined by competition between private companies.
How often do you hear successful like people that are paid quite a bit, let's just call it, like people that make like $250,000 a year calling for socialism? I would say very rarely.
They call for socialism because like people like to look up socialism before we actually start.
So socialism is a political and economic theory of social organization which advocates that the means of production, distribution, thank you, and exchange should be owned or regulated by the community as a whole.
Yeah, and so it's not regulated by the supply and demand of the private companies.
Say again. Sorry, I
like,
got stuck on some of the, because where I got stuck with distribution for some reason was that the means of production? For some reason, that my brain was like, that's not how you say that.
Seize the means of production. Literally. But like, so I may not get this entirely right, but we're going to go with it because, you know, this is the topic. With capitalism, it's determined by private companies and competition. Socialism, it's determined by the community itself. So if people think that, you know, someone else is making too much money, the community as a whole can decide to redistribute their wealth or redistribute their assets. And we have some things like that. Like, for instance, when I think it was either Rockefeller or somebody else, but they basically were creating an entire monopoly on the industry that they were owning. Like they owned the fucking oil and they owned the railroads to get the oil there, and they owned the trains and the everything. And we came out with the Antitrust Act, which was like, once you get to a certain point, then the Antitrust Act says you cannot do that. We're going to break you up. Microsoft at one point was hit with the Antitrust Act because they were so far ahead in the computer industry that they were becoming a monopoly. And so I believe the government made them give out their program for that, like made them like their Windows program at the time. They made them give it out to their competitors for free so that the competitors could keep up. And then Microsoft, of course, then went on to crush the competition again, but the competition could at least keep up to the point where it wasn't a total monopoly. They weren't controlling everything.
I don't know if that's... Do you find that fair?
Yes, because then once Microsoft is able to control that entire industry, they can then set their price at an outrageous level, and no one else can compete with them to stop them. So it would be like, I have total control over the gummy bear industry, and then I can charge $100 for a gummy bear, and you can't come about and be like, oh, I'm going to charge $5 for mine, because you literally can't compete with me. I control all of the gummy bear industry. So how the fuck are you going to start a business? And it's the same, it's price gouging. So once you're in control of the entire industry, you then get to set the price, not competition, not the market, not the government, just you. And that's why we prevent monopolies from happening. I think AT&T got hit with the Antitrust Act within the last 5 years because they tried buying, I think they tried buying Verizon. Or someone. They tried buying a huge company within the cell phone industry, and the government was like, no, because you are going to control damn near everything.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of people thought Disney was going to get hit with the Antitrust Act once they bought Marvel, and then they bought Star Wars, and then they bought Fox Studios, and people were like, holy shit, they're buying fucking everything. I think AT&T tried buying Time Warner Cable. I think that's what it was.
That's what, no,
Spectrum.
it's, I think AT&T owns DirecTV.
And they tried buying Time Warner.
Okay.
And then Antitrust Act was like, nope, not happening. And that's why we can't have a pure capitalist economy, because then you start getting these huge inequalities. It's called laissez-faire economics, which is basically like nobody controls anything. There's no government, no community, nothing that's going to stop anything from happening. You just let the invisible hand of capitalism control the market, and you get trillionaires who are complete monopoly, like warlords that can just do whatever they want with their money.
So as long as they keep it affordable and don't try to take over literally everything, like what Disney is doing, then it's fine.
Yeah, as long as there's at least competition.
See, and that's
to
where
help regulate these companies from completely controlling the price of something.
I mean, really, what's Disney's competition?
Well, Disney has competition from other, like, it depends on like what part of Disney you're talking about. If you're talking about theme parks, they have like Six Flags and Universal Studios. If you're talking about like movies, they have like Sony and
so that's where Disney's smart, and they've dipped their hands in literally everything.
Yeah,
but they're not taking control of one. They're a jack of all trades, not
exactly. It would be like, it's why Coca-Cola doesn't buy Pepsi. They buy vitamin water, and they go and buy a chip company, and then they go and buy like a produce company, but they don't buy.
AT&T was like, we want all the TVs.
Dude, they were like, we want all of the service.
We're gonna control it all.
Yeah, and so like that's why you can't just completely control the entire market of a certain area, because like I think it's Martin Shkreli. He's a dude that is in the pharmaceutical
fuck
company.
that piece of shit.
Yeah, and what he did was he bought the rights to one pill, and then
jacked up the
price by like 5,000%
People
or
couldn't
something.
afford
I'm
their
just throwing
fucking-
out. It went from like $5 to like $1,000 a pill, and
I think from what I know, $850 was the highest I heard that it went to. But regardless,
I have no idea what the
I remember
price
reading
was.
into it because I was like, "Who the fuck is this guy?"
And
he looks evil as shit.
he looks like a little grimy villain.
Yeah, straight up.
You know, he actually like lives his life like a villain. Like the Wu-Tang Clan had their last album and he bought it and no one can hear it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know about that too.
Yeah. And so what he did with the pharmaceutical company is price gouge.
Yeah.
He bought the entire patent or the rights to a certain pill that some people like literally depend on.
Yeah.
And then he jacked the price up by a ridiculous amount.
Did that ever get figured out?
Yes, there were actually, I think it was some like high school students that like developed like a workaround for the drug, which it was like a drug that did the same effect, but it was different, and it was actually cheaper than the original drug. And then Martin Shkreli was like, "This was what I was trying to do the entire time. I was trying to force the market to create a cheaper option." And I was like, "Suck a dick,
Eat a
dude.
fucking
You
dick.
didn't
You
have to
had the cheaper option.
You didn't have to do that.
No.
Do it that way if that was your goal.
You could have literally fucking stood on a podium and went, "Hey, I want some competition." That could have fucking done it. Not literally almost kill people because you're taking the medication that they need.
Yeah. And so like it did get worked around, and that's
So what did he do from that? Did he back down and put his prices back down?
I have no idea. Once I heard that, I think it was.
I just remember reading up about all this and watching some of the videos and him sitting in court while
with
people
a
were
smirk on his face,
laughing in their faces like, dude, you are an actual evil sack of shit.
Martin Shkreli is one of the few people in real life that like is an actual villain.
Remember how like we were talking about like who would we have on the podcast if it got to a point where like we could just choose anybody in the world? If for some reason you or me or somebody was like, have him on. No.
I would actually want to have him on.
No.
And,
I'd probably fucking stab him.
Have you ever watched an interview with him?
No.
It's actually really interesting because he sits down and he explains his entire like mindset on things and what he wants out of life and just what it's like to be that young and that rich and all that shit.
Like I understand being open to some things, but like if you were literally like you were taking shit away from people that literally needed it, you were basically it's kind of torture. It's kind of these people were dependent upon the medicine and you were taking it away and smiling in court just because you wanted some competition. If that was exactly why, so you're going to hold people's lives in your hands just because you want to have some fun. I would argue with you until I fucking died that I would not want him on here.
See, and I would want him on not because I think he's a great person, not because I agree with him on his shit, but just to like sit down and have a conversation with the enemy. Because I think that's, what leads to any type of progress in the first place is sitting down and having a conversation with people you disagree with. And even though this dude has done terrible things, to hear what he has to say and then personally be able to directly disagree and counter with it and then get to hear what Martin Shkreli thinks about a direct counter rather than him just being able to sit and talk into a camera by himself and say whatever he wants without getting challenged. It would be nice to hear how he responds to straight up confrontation on his opinion.
I guess this is where you and I differ, and it's actually a good segue into a question. Do you believe that some people are just lost causes?
Yeah, I think regardless to whether it be how their life is gone, how what they've gone through, and it just like hardened, they hardened their heart or hardened their mindset, or some people legit having mental problems that are just like that aren't seen as like drastic enough mental health issues where they're like, oh, this person needs to be put up in a psych ward, but it's obviously affecting them. Mm-hmm. I definitely think so. I definitely think there are people that like you couldn't sit down and change their mind. I think there are people you couldn't sit down and like convert into being a good person. I think there are some people that just like are a waste of human life. And I know that's kind of like a fucked up thing to say, but like life is precious in a sense that life is beautiful and rare, but there are some people that waste their life.
If you had a chance to interview somebody that had murdered 80 people, Would you do it?
Yeah. Because I'd want to hear what someone so sick and twisted, how their brain works. Why are they like this? Doesn't mean I agree with it. Doesn't mean I support it. I don't think.
No, you don't even have to give those disclaimers. Well, I guess if you want, you can give those disclaimers.
I don't think giving them a platform is in any way like helping their agenda or proving that they're like, or like validating their mindset. Because I think if that was the case, then, serial killer documentaries would affect people way differently than they do.
Right. I guess, and again, this is where we differ of just like, I'd much rather spend my time doing literally anything else than even just trying to figure out like what went through your mind in these moments. Like, yeah, the curiosity is there, but like you murdered 80 people. Like I could give a fuck less if you were literally being picked apart, like inch by inch, your body was just being ripped apart. Wouldn't care. Literally wouldn't care because no, I don't know. I just, that's as far as it goes in my head of just like, I wouldn't give them the time of day. They don't deserve the time of day. You're going to murder 80 people. I don't give a fuck. And that's kind of how like Martin Shkreli, right?
Yeah.
Shkreli.
Martin Shkreli.
However the fuck you say it, is not like, I don't know if anybody actually died from what he did, but people were literally begging like him to stop. And he was just laughing in their faces. Like, that's it. You're just a fucked up human being that just needs to be put in a box and buried under the ground and just left alone to die. Like you're something's fucked up in you, dude. You want to do it for competition, whatever. There's no reason to do that. There's none. There's no good reason to do that to people. And that's where it's just like, I don't want to waste my time even giving you the opportunity to talk. It's not in my interest. Like, I wouldn't sit there and want to listen to why he did it. I don't need to know why. You're just a shit fucking person for doing what you did. Like,
wouldn't knowing why someone did that help you if you were in the situation to identify someone else who may act the same way or prevent someone else from doing something?
No, because that's such a rare fucking, honestly, that's such a rare thing to happen.
I don't mean like, his exact situation, but I just mean being able to hear the thought process of like a person who lacks complete empathy, and then going like, oh, like, being able to like pick out key qualities and then go, oh shit, like I can see this in like either people I know or like a politician I could vote for or a person that I work with or anything, in the sense of like you get a window into
a psychopath's head
and go, oh shit, like I don't agree with what you did, but I now see your like train of thought on it, and like it seems sane up until like this point.
Yeah, no, I get it, but no, because it just doesn't spark my interest.
And I think I literally interesting.
Like if you could bring back Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini, Mao Zedong, whoever the fuck, if you could bring those people back, wouldn't even want to talk to them. Wouldn't even fucking be curious. I wouldn't watch like the I don't even know if maybe I might watch the interview, but I wouldn't want to do it myself because I'd be so goddamn angry. I wouldn't be able to have the interview because that's why it's perfect for podcasts for like political figures or people that you disagree with when you're watching it happen, because you don't get to chime in. I would just be fucking pure. I wouldn't even be able to listen to them.
You wouldn't be able to control your emotions.
Right.
Yeah.
Versus where if it's somebody else that's doing it, let's just say you, because apparently you can do something like that.
Yeah.
It would just be like, yeah, maybe I might chime in or tune in to hear what was said, but maybe not, because I just like, I don't know if I care.
And
that's just, it's personal belief.
If obviously, to each his own. If Hitler came back and there was an interview with him, I would definitely want to fucking listen because of just how.
But what if the whole time he just sat there the whole time and it was just like, I did it because I want to do it?
Well, then it'd be a waste of an interview.
That's what I'm saying, though.
But I don't think it would be that way. I mean, Hitler wrote an entire fucking book on his entire mindset. He had a super charismatic and convincing persona to him until his horrendous acts.
I'm just saying, sometimes it just like that's what I mean by lost causes.
And if it's someone completely ignorant and not going to have a conversation, then I don't want to do it because there's not a conversation. If they're just going to sit there and do it, say, I did it because I wanted to, not elaborate, not give their...
Well, yeah, I mean, elaborate, but everything comes down to the fact of them just being like, I did it because I believe that it was right.
Yeah, I think everybody does that.
I find that so fucking like, there's something...
Remember when we got on the point where everyone thinks their intent is good?
Right.
That's why I find it so fascinating, because you can go into something.
What led you to this point?
Yeah, like how does your personal idea of good intent lead you down a road where you commit genocide, or you price gouge medication, or you go on a killing spree? Like, where does your like reasoning lie in that? And if someone is able to give their like deep inner thoughts and elaboration on it, like, I find it fascinating.
I'm trying to find your weak point, so I have another one. If I don't know, Danny, your mom,
somebody I have a personal relationship with,
was in a relationship where the dude beat the fucking shit out of them at one point. Okay, let's just call it like your mom was at some point dating some dude, got the shit beat out of her.
Yeah.
Would you sit down and talk with that guy? And ask him why he did it?
No, but
why?
Because I don't find it like in that situation to be that much of my own relevance. I don't have like any interest in that person, because like they're just one piece of shit among a sea of pieces of shit, and on top of that, they like personally affected somebody that I love directly.
So do you think that you have a lack of empathy for the people that were literally lit on fire?
No. I think it's because they're rare cases out of the crazy like sea of fucking psychopaths, that there are the ones that are crazier than crazy, and that's where I find like curiosity. But if it's just some abusive piece of shit dude, like,
you don't want to know like what he went. That's what I'm asking though, is like, where do you draw your line of interest?
And again, like, it would depend on context, but like my girlfriend now like has a dude in her past who wasn't physically abusive, but the dude was a piece of shit. But I don't know, like, even that guy, I kind of am curious, like why the fuck are you the way you are? So maybe I would sit down and have a conversation with him, even though he, like, in my opinion, treated Danny like awfully. But I kind of want to know what the fuck like goes on in his head to be that way, and why like my girlfriend, when in the relationship with him, didn't like find it completely appalling when something happened, or found him still like charming at some points. Like, why is that dynamic there? And so maybe I would sit down and talk to him.
And I understand that like some things are case by case, but I'm just trying to figure out exactly like where your brain lies on that, because when it comes down to like people that hurt other people, I have literally no interest in getting to know them. And that's where it's like, if you watched person after person for 1 million in a row, literally just getting lit on fire, and then they asked you, hey, you want to do an interview with Hitler? Like, I wonder where you would be at that point. Like, I want to know.
If I was like a Jew in the camp.
No. If you were a guy that, let's just call, like, you were an American that got to watch for some reason,
like, I
witnessed Jews getting like literally gassed out, lit on fire, shot on the point, ripped away from their kids, all the things that happened during all of that. And then 5-10 minutes later, after you got done watching everything, they're like, would you like to sit down and talk with Hitler about what you just saw?
5-10 minutes after, probably not, considering where my emotions were. If I had time to process it and kind of separate myself from my emotion, I'd still want to pick their brain.
Okay, so let's say you watched it a year later, you process everything, but he's still doing it every day, and he gets done with what he was doing that day a year later.
Well, let's put in the situation of Kim Jong-un, leader of North Korea.
Yeah,
I would be interested in interviewing him, just to like try to understand how he justifies like starving his population. I think even like shitty people, like the shittiest of people, they are interesting because they're so fucked up. And I think I can think that way without in any way like disenfranchised.
By the way, I am not challenging you in a sense of, oh, maybe I'm not challenging you thinking that you're okay with the actions that these people do.
No, I know. I'm trying to like put a statement like I can separate my empathy for people who are like a victim of someone's actions and my curiosity with a wicked person.
So would you say that you're separating that just to cure your curiosity?
Yeah, just to like better understand the evil in the world.
For what benefactor?
I think the best way of dealing with something, preventing something, or solving something is to truly understand the root of the problem.
Isn't the whole...
And so like...
because I was going to make a point about like the whole like history repeats itself kind of thing. Like it doesn't matter if you learn from it or not. Like it's just, you have to, I don't know where I was going to go with that point.
Well, I think our country is a good example of how that's like, how that goes against that. Like people came from a empire basically where the church controlled everything and was, it was a total like, what's the word I'm looking for? Where there's a king and a queen and they...
an empire?
Yeah, like they came from an empire where it was like, I don't want to say tyrannical because it wasn't like a tyrant, but... oh, there's another word. Whatever. Dictator, something along those lines. And so because they came from such a awful empire and a really bad ran state at the time, when they wrote the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and everything, our founding fathers made sure that we learned from where we came from so we didn't do it again.
Right.
Separation of church and state,
that's where
having political power separated, all that stuff.
That's where I have the question of, do you think it was them just saying like, we know that that's not right and then starting anew somewhere else? Or do you think that they like interviewed those people to get an understanding, to make sure that they know?
Okay. So, I don't think they interviewed it, but I don't think they would have been able to prevent it nearly as well as they did without truly understanding it. And they truly understood it because they came from it.
They came from it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I understand that.
And so like, I want to understand evil in the world without having to go through it. And so these people, our founding fathers, went through a oppressive empire, and that's how they understood it. So then when it came down to them being in a situation to start something again and learn from those mistakes, they learned from those mistakes because they went through it. But I don't want to have to learn through like the mistakes of these like tyrants or killers or, psychopaths by being a victim of them. To truly understand their evil, I want to understand their evil. Right, rather than just like going, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to listen to it.
No. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that, are you just carrying your own curiosity, or are you going to take the information that you learn from that person and go out into the world and apply it somehow? Because what I'm getting at is like, you can clearly look at Kim Jong-un and go, that's fucking terrible. We shouldn't do that. Knowing what he's doing and just look at it and go, I'm not going to do that. I know that that's wrong, versus like talking to him and learning why he does it. Like, what's the point in doing that when you can literally just look at it and go, yeah, no, dude, that's not good.
Because I think I would have a much better way of identifying the problem or seeing it come up than, like, for instance, you would by just like going off of a limited amount of information about how he runs his country or how he came to power or why he's doing what he does. I think when you get full details of whether it be an event or a person doing said event, then you get a much better overall understanding of how to go about it in case it shows its head. Would I go out and be some activist against Hitler if I interviewed him? Probably not. But that doesn't mean that I wouldn't help educate other people when I had the opportunity to, and I wouldn't go out of my way to like stop something from happening if I can see a correlation because I got that information from that person.
So what I'm saying is, are you mostly talking to these people to cure your own curiosity?
I think it's a little bit of both. Like, I think my curiosity comes from like the fact that I could better understand it and then apply it in life. That's where my curiosity lies, is within that entire dynamic.
Right. I guess then this is just my point, and again, to each their own. Like, we obviously can have these conversations, but it's just like I can look at that and go, no, I don't need to do that. I know how to avoid that. Don't be like that person. Like, I'm not gonna, if I had the chance to rule over a land, I know, don't starve your people, figure out a way to make it work, and listen to, you know, whatever opinions people have and things, and like get information rather than I rule all of you. You don't get to speak to me. I'm going to withhold food and close you off from the rest of the world. Like, you can look at those things and go, that's not right.
Yeah, I agree that there are those standards that you go into it with.
And all I'm saying is, like, I don't, in my own personal opinion, I don't need to go and speak to that person to know to not do those things.
I think here's a question that will help you better understand
your point of view,
my perspective on it. If you got your own country and I got my own country, and you, like, with your knowledge that you have now, we're going to start up your own country, but I got to interview one-on-one, like, all of the worst tyrants in the world and in history, the people that had awful empires, and I learned how they came to be and how they got such absolute power that they couldn't be overthrown, and why they did what they did, and how, like, they might have started off as a like good intended leader and it turned sour and corrupted and all that stuff. If I interviewed all of these awful genocidal maniacs that are just power thirsty, and then I went and started my own country, do you think I would have a better understanding of how to run it well than you would?
Yeah, probably.
And so that's my entire point when it comes to countries, when it comes to people, when it comes to actions, when it comes to social and emotional and everything.
But that's why I asked you, like, what would you do with that information? Like, would you just go out into the world and, okay, now I have this new information, I can apply it to my daily life? Or would you use it in a, like, more meaningful, like, way? Or was it just for your curiosity? Like,
I think once I acquired such of a unique and once I acquired, like, say, this unique information, because not everybody gets to interview Shkreli, not everybody would, and barely anyone's been able to interview Hitler, like all that stuff. Once I got this unique information, I think I would be in a much more unique position to then go about and spread it or advise other people in positions to help them. And so if I just interviewed, like, absolute bums all the time, I wouldn't be in any, like, much better position than most, like, than you know, someone whose profession is like understanding a criminal or something like that. So, like, if I were to go and interview, like, all these abusive ex-boyfriends, like, yeah, I would have probably better information. I would probably actually have a really good like, opinion on how people can go about relationships, but again, I wouldn't be a professional. But if I got to interview, like, you know, like I said, the psychopaths of psychopaths, then I think I would have a much more unique position with a much more unique background with experience in it, to where, like, I could, you know, help advise other people and spread that information. I'm repeating myself at this point.
Yeah, I guess.
And so, like, yes, I would use it for good.
No, I don't think that you
wouldn't do it
wouldn't.
just for my own curiosity, in a sense of, like, I have this urge and I want to quench it, and therefore
I don't believe
I'm
that
going
you're
to.
shallow. My main thing was just to see where you would go with it, because.
And that's the thing, though. I don't think someone's shallow if they have that curiosity and they just.
I don't think you're shallow either.
No. You said I don't think you're shallow when I said I wouldn't just learn it because I was curious and that's it. But I don't think that's shallow if you do.
I think it's fucking just it. Yeah, I don't know like necessarily what I think on it. I just find it more of like it was the exact example of like somebody who's killed millions of fucking people, and then how the whole example of just like, yeah, if you knew the guy that beat the shit, like, and this is information now people are going to know, but if I ever meet the guy that beat the shit out of my mom, I'm gonna break his fucking legs.
Yeah, and that is...
But I'm not going to ask him why he did it.
No.
I'm just going to break his fucking legs.
Yeah, and that's totally...
But that's my point.
But that's the thing. Like, you're in a position where it's like something you're much, much more emotionally invested in, and when you can't control your emotions over that thing,
but that's
totally like that's understandable.
I don't see a difference. I don't see a line drawn anywhere of just like talking to somebody who's literally tortured millions of people, and somebody who's like just beat the shit out of somebody that I know personally.
So someone who beat up a woman, that is you're a complete stranger to.
There's one more point that I would make to that before you continue with what you're going to say.
Okay.
And this is where it's like, depends. If for some fucking reason Hitler was alive and he was just like, there's nothing I'll ever be able to do or say that literally can take anything back what I did. But I know now that I was entirely wrong, and no one's going to accept that by any means, ever. But just when somebody's apologetic versus like, no, they just think what they did was right, that's where there's a difference. But I'm talking about like, so what I was getting at is, say, this is such a fucking crazy hypothetical.
Let's go.
Say Hitler was alive and was just like, I'm sorry, like genuinely was sorry, has said it for years.
So if Hitler comes out and apologizes for, and that stuff.
But like, was years and years of like apologizing, then maybe I would be curious, like what caused you to get there? But if the person isn't that way, I give no fucking shits, dude, because then that's like a tricky situation, because it's the same thing as like, would I fucking talk to somebody who it's the same thing as the guy who used to be Nazi and was going around fixing
the dude who used to be a neo-Nazi and
was changing people.
Yeah.
Different because he's changed himself and he's trying to do better.
Of course, yeah.
Right. So like,
I think
the guy
you'd be pretty
who
ignorant if you didn't
beat the shit out of whoever, was extremely apologetic about it, like, and was working on his life and trying to better himself and doing all this stuff, then maybe.
Does that apply to the guy that was abusive towards your mother?
I don't know. I really don't.
And that's where it comes down to how much your emotions are entangled in it.
But that's what I said, is even with if Hitler was alive and apologizing about it, would I be open to that? I still don't know.
And so
I said maybe.
My thing is like, my being born in the time I am in the country I am, with my priorities on everything in the present in society, I'm not that emotionally invested in Hitler. Maybe if I, obviously, I think my opinion of that would change if I went to the concentration camps in Germany. If I sat down and went through a documentary about it, or if I read the Diary of Anne Frank. If I went and got myself personally invested in the nightmarish, horrendous acts that he committed, then my emotions would then be much more invested in it. But right now, currently, as I'm sitting here recording this podcast with you, I'm not that emotionally invested in that entire
but even just the thought of it doesn't.
No, I get it, and like I can like sit here and think of like the families it affected and the
you're saying you
like,
can separate yourself from
deaths.
it.
Yes, but I can separate myself from that to the point where I would sit down and have a conversation. But it's the closer it is to me, the more it hits home, then the harder it is to separate your emotions. But if I was in perfect control of my emotions, even the stuff that hits home the hardest, if I could separate myself, I would still sit down and have a conversation.
Of course. I mean, that's literally like anything. That's saying like, if I had the superpower to separate like my body from my emotion, my mind from my emotions, but that's all I'm saying. It's just like, it's one of those things where it's like people that fucking hit people in verbally abusive relationships and physically abusive relationships, people that go through all these different things, like unless they're actively trying to change, like even then I'd still like, no, because people that are actively trying to change, that's where like I'll leave an open mind to it. I mean, Alex came on here and talked about that. And by no means do I have any bad blood toward Alex, but that's because they worked it out and they fixed themselves and they both have an agreement that they've moved past it. That whole thing, right? They worked on it. It's done. It's over with. They did everything they could to better it, and they've bettered it.
So, what about
let's just use my mom and the guy as an example.
Okay.
My mom's sitting in the room. This guy's sitting in the room. They've spent days, years, whatever the fuck, talking about it. And they've come to an agreement that she forgives him and he feels like a fucking piece of shit. And like, he's trying to better himself from it. And she's completely moved past it. Okay. But how are you going to do that with murder is my main thing. Is like, you can't make up for that. You can't. Like, you literally can't. Mm-hmm. So that's where I can't move past that.
What if the dude was super, super... dude, one of the problems I have with this podcast is I'll sit here and I can't think of words. I do it so well.
You can't think of words. Bitch, do you know who you're talking to?
Well, no, but I'm saying
you'll
like...
say a shit ton of things and I'm like...
I'll get stumped
is spelled
sometimes.
THE.
I'll get stumped sometimes on a word that I'm like... I totally have at my disposal.
It's really annoying because it's like you don't want to sit here and go,
yeah, exactly.
But in regular, like without the microphones, yeah, I get it.
Okay, so
it's annoying.
Now distracting you for 10 seconds, I got my word.
Nice.
The dude was, say the dude was totally remorseful over his actions, but your mom hadn't forgiven him. But he was like groveling for forgiveness. Whether that be from you or from her or whatever, then what do you do?
If he's really like that forgiving, like I'll think about it. But again, I don't know. But I was using both extreme ends of it. You know, There's obviously all the middle things that you can throw my way that my brain hasn't thought about yet. Mm-hmm. And like, I really don't know. I'd have to give it a fucking hours of thought into that. One of
the most,
because honestly, to give my answer, would I instantly go for his throat? No. Would I want to? Yeah. But just because if my mom hadn't moved past it and this guy did, that's not fair to that person. You know, there's all these different...
Yeah, because you want to be fair to the person who's affected, but you also want to be able to make your own decision.
But if the dude came into my house and was like, I'm sorry, I killed your mother, guess what's getting ripped out? His throat. Mm-hmm. Because there's nothing you can do to take... I don't... Like, murder, dude,
that doesn't
murder
pull that emotion out
of it. That's it. Like, I have no forgiveness for murder. Literally none at all.
One quote that... I think is like a hard pill to swallow, but I think unless you really go out of your way to not let your mind work this way, I think it's kind of hard to avoid in general. Mm-hmm. But it's a Joseph Stalin quote, and he says, "The death of one man is a tragedy. The death of millions is a statistic." And as fucked up as that is, the reason it's such a famous quote is because it holds a truth to it, in a sense of like, the more large of a scale anything is, the less we are as human beings able to fully grasp it. And so when it comes to like, if you heard someone like walked up to a man in the street and just put a gun to his head and just killed him in cold blood, and that was like the only death that, like, let's say it happened like downtown Lancaster, and then the ripple effect starts to happen where you hear about the life that person lived, the lives they touched, how their loved ones are like grieving and how they'll never be able to get that person back and everything. It hits home way harder than the death of millions would. And it's why like we get more heartbroken over like a school shooting where like a handful of kids died than we get over like
people being bombed.
Like the bombing of an entire city. And I think that's why, because just like I would argue any other human being, I'm a victim to the overall like moral of the story that Stalin is saying with that quote is it would be easier for me to interview a horrendous dictator than it would be to interview someone who was abusive to my loved one. Or even someone who
that's extremely interesting to me.
Or even someone who like walked up and just killed an innocent man in cold blood. It's the uniqueness of their situation, but also the absolute vast scale makes it almost like you detach yourself from it because your brain can't comprehend it.
No, I get it, but for me, no. Like it's still the same. I still get the same amount, like, if not multiplied by the person who's killed more. Like it's just pure fucking hate and anger and rage that just sits inside of me. Like I understand you can disconnect yourself from all that. I get it, but I would just sit there and think about one person at a time and just go through my head about what that person was probably going through. I mean, there's multiple movies on it. You can get a general idea of like the shit that went down. Yeah. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas is fucking a perfect example.
Yeah. Why do you think your thought process that you just described is unique, or not unique, but more uncommon than common? Do you think more people think like me, or do you think more people think like you?
I can't answer that.
Just like a guess. I'm not saying that you're going to be right.
50-50. I could not even, like, if I said me, then that's just assuming.
Well, I think it would be ignorant for you to say you're the only one, but
no, I definitely don't think I'm the only one, but I couldn't tell you like who weighs more on what side.
I would guess that more people are like me than like you. And I think a lot of people like to say they're like you. But when it came down to it, I think more people are like me than like you. I just think like less people admit it. And my question is, because I think you're in the minority of this, why do you think you're different than how I am?
Fuck, dude. I don't know. The only thing that ever comes to mind is like my empathy scale goes, it's fucking way up there. And I'm not saying that yours isn't, but I'm saying like that is why I feel
you
the way
have a hypersensitivity to empathy.
Yeah. And that's why I feel the way that I do. Now, that's not to say that other people do or don't. That's not to say that you do or don't have the same amount of empathy, if not more, if not less. But that is why I feel the way that I do, is because I literally put myself in people's situations all the time. When I fuck up, when I say something rude, instantly in my head, I'm like, fuck, I didn't mean to say that. I wonder how that probably felt like shit to hear. Like, that's where my empathy goes. So it's like when I think about the families, the tragedies, all those different things, if I'm correct, like I even know stories of my grandpa. Yeah. When he was, I think, and I really hope I don't fuck this up, but I think he was like anywhere between like 3 and 5 wearing a gas mask during the war because like planes were flying over and shit. I think about stuff like that. I think about the stories that I hear. It goes over and over and over again in my head. And if the motherfucker was sitting in front of me, literally all I would repeat in my head is all the different stories that I've heard, the screams, the fucking, the pleading, the begging, all that shit. Everything would run through my head because even if I'm forcing myself to think that way, I'm literally doing that because it's a fact. It happened and I need to feel that. And I just can't separate my emotion from something like that. I think it's fucking horrendous. And it's just like, I wouldn't be able to get past it. And it doesn't interest me to talk to somebody like that is the main point.
I'm curious. Do you think your hypersensitivity when it comes to empathy causes you to overreact in situations?
Yeah, of course.
Do you see any
problem
way
with that?
No, do you see any way of being able to like eliminate that.
Well, that's why I told you with
Like eliminate your like overreaction. So like say you said something and you're like, fuck, that probably felt like shit to hear. But in reality, it was totally like casual. But you like went out of your way to apologize a couple times about it. And that person's like,
dude, it's really not that big of a deal.
Seriously.
I do that all the time. I haven't been able to separate myself from that period, which is why I try not to say like.
So I guess the first question should be, do you think it's a problem?
I think it's a nuisance.
I would say it's a problem. Like,
I think that's personal belief at that point.
yeah, but I would think that like, overreacting to it would get you caught up in trivial things and cause you to like sacrifice a dynamic with somebody or like make someone feel like they have to be like extra careful around you and kind of feel like they have to like not like show that like maybe something like maybe hold back around you so that you don't interpret something as like you offended them.
That's their own choice. That's literally their own choice, just like it's my own choice. That's why I have the friends that I do and I don't have the friends that I do. Like it's because of, it's just a difference in opinion. It's literally, that's all it is. That's why like you can see it as a problem all you want. That's your opinion, but that's not a fact of if I constantly reassure people or constantly re-apologize for something that happened, like up until it's said by that person, like, dude, really, it is okay. Like, just leave it alone. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like, I don't continue past that point. But if I feel like, no, it wasn't enough, like, and there's not been a sign that it's enough, like, then I'm gonna fix it whatever way I can. But I mean, it's gotten me where I am now. I make sure, like, that's why I overemphasize everything with everybody. So my points are always very fucking clear. My apologies, whenever I do apologize, are like extreme apologies.
Yeah, I bet.
But they clear my points. And it never comes back to bite me in the ass. I've literally never had somebody say, like, you didn't apologize. Because I make sure that the apology is felt.
With it, like you said, you think it's like a nuisance.
It's a nuisance because sometimes it takes too much of my time.
Yeah. Do you think that you could like work past it or like improve on it without sacrificing your empathy?
Yeah, I have over time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because like I think at one point you said like you couldn't separate yourself, and I was wondering if that's what you were.
No, there are some things I'm literally never going to be able to separate myself from. You murder millions of people, I'm not going to be able to separate that. Sorry. You murder anybody, I'm not going to be able to separate that. You murdered somebody. If it was an accidental murder, whatever type of
Manslaughter.
Yes, then fucking
Fuck,
depends.
See if I got that right.
I believe it's manslaughter.
Continue. The crime of killing a human being without malice, aforethought, or otherwise in circumstances not accounting to murder. So,
Manslaughter.
Yeah.
So manslaughter. Yeah, I'll talk about that one.
Yeah, because that's where your empathy comes into play.
Correct. You didn't go out of your way to kill somebody. If you did it for gang related reasons, I don't care. I don't like. There obviously are crazy cases where it's just like, hey, you kill this person or we kill your family. It's like, that's different. But I'm talking about if you go up to somebody, like Hitler thought people need to die, too many people in the world, I hate Jews, whatever his case may be. No, dude, no. It was millions of fucking people. Not separating myself. I refuse to ever even try to.
You know why I think people are, when I said guess and you said 50-50, and I think it's more people separate themselves from it, whether or not they want to, or whether or not they say they do, is because I think if Hitler was revived or never died or whatever, and a primetime CNN interview with him came out, I think that shit would go more viral than viral. I think everyone would watch it.
That's what I'm saying. I even said, like, I would probably tune into it because even holding back I said this from the beginning. I don't want to talk to him. would I tune in to see what the fuck is up? Like, yeah, out of curiosity, I'd want to see what the hell was going on. But if it was just an interview of him explaining like why he did it, I wouldn't sit there and change my mind on it. I wouldn't feel, but that's what I'm saying is like that cures my curiosity and there's nothing I can do about it. It's already like, it's an interview. It exists.
So if you were the only person who could
what?
Interview him and get like a video recording interview, and for some reason you're in the situation where you're the only one who does it. And if you don't do it, then that interview never happens, and no one and like you don't get to get that content or whatever. Would you do it?
Depends on if like fucking people needed it or not.
I'm sure people would want it.
They would want it. Do we need it? That's the difference. Like, I don't feel like we need it. But if for some reason it was like, we need this to happen, like, I mean, it would just depend. But really, I'll tell you right now, probably wouldn't be a very fair interview.
Like, no, I'm not talking about the word. I smiled, but like, I don't mean the word fair. How would you go about that? If you were like, you're the guy, like you have to be the interviewer. Like, how would you conduct it when you say it wouldn't be very fair? Like, what is your mind picturing?
What I mean by very fair is like, I would not be able to get past my anger. I wouldn't be able to get past my sadness for everything that had happened. Like, I wouldn't be able to get past it. I just wouldn't. That's just who I am. But like, it's not even like shameful to say that or weird to say that. Like, I wouldn't be able to pull myself past it. So it's like, do we need, like, fuck, dude, I don't know. If I was the only person and he was sitting in the room, I would be like, government gives me a list of questions. I would just fucking turn this way. I would turn like 90 degrees away from him and just ask the questions and have him talking to the camera. Like, I wouldn't be able to look at him and be like, oh yeah, no, I get that your grandmother pissed you off and that's why you killed millions of people. Like, I don't think there was some belief that something had to do with his grandma.
No. I mean, people make jokes about the fact that he got rejected at art school. This is why it fucking happened.
Yeah.
But, I don't think anyone would, no, people definitely would. There's obviously fucking neo-Nazis, but I don't think any decent person would sit there and be like, oh, I get it. Like,
but that's my point. So it wouldn't be a fair interview.
I think you can do a fair interview without agreeing with them or without like being like.
But if you
polite.
go into any conversation with anybody, right, and you go into it angry, the only thing you're going to get back is anger. Like, it's literally that's for most of the time. If you go into something like fucking swinging, they're just going to start taking the punches and answer you calmly? No. So that's why I'm saying it wouldn't be fair, because I wouldn't be able to control my emotion in that case. So I would be I'd be a bad fit to do that.
Yeah, it's such an interesting hypothetical. It's like one of those conversations that really gets to like show, I think, the character of somebody, but also show their honesty. Because I think like I very well could have like agreed with you on your point and been like, oh, I would have done the same thing. Right. And then if I was put in the situation, acted exactly as I described now. And that would show a like disingenuine quality within myself, because I lose nothing from admitting what I've said.
There's no problem.
I gain only a false idea of like this like moral superiority if I lie about it to make myself like look better.
But why does it make you look bad if you can separate your emotion from that specific situation?
It would make me look bad in the eyes of people who
just heard what I said.
Well, no, would see it as something inexcusable.
Yeah, I mean, people think this whole conversation could be seen as bad. It's just depending on the fucking person's opinion.
And so, but what I'm getting at is, I think there's a good chunk of people that would, if they were sitting with you and having the same exact topic discussed, would be like 100% agreeing with everything you said, and maybe even like trying to one up you on how like against it they would be. And then, like when it came down to like walking the walk rather than talking the talk, would not act as they spoke. And so that's why I think these type of topics are so interesting, because if you sit down and have these with people, you can see how they answer or see what they say, and then just go like, okay, like that makes sense. Like I can tell you're answering honestly, and like maybe you're like admitting where exceptions lie, and you're admitting like, oh, like I wouldn't be like the best person here, or this is where maybe I'd have a negative trait show. But the people that are like, nope, no exception, I am just a Puritan in this sense, and I show no sin. When people answer like that, I think you can go, oh, okay, so you're like too scared to admit that you like would find any like interest, or you wouldn't even watch an interview with one of the worst people to ever exist. And so like it's such an interesting topic that I think like never really gets talked about, because it's just so obscure. But this is why in like a general sense, I find such value in hypotheticals, because you get that microscope on someone's persona.
Yeah.
And you get to like see how they would act in situations that are obviously not even possible. But at the same time, you can correlate that line of thinking with real life situations that are very probable, and go, oh shit, this isn't somebody that I actually want to be friends with. Or this isn't somebody that I would want to like spend a lot of time around.
Right.
Because I can see right off the bat that you're like totally lying out of your ass. And you like I can think of instances where you acted completely differently, and you're sitting here like talking about yourself.
That's why anybody that says like, yeah, I would jump on a grenade immediately. Okay. It's the whole thing we have.
Perfect example right there. It's like, oh, would you take a bullet for your friend, or would you take a bullet for this, or would you jump on a grenade for said person? And they're like, without a doubt. And then you go, okay, cool, because I have a gun right here. Do it. And they're like, whoa, right?
Right.
And so I think it's more admirable.
That's where you can say like, I'd like to believe I would do that, but I don't know.
I think it's way more admirable when people admit that they like either don't know or that they wouldn't in a situation, and they're realistic about it. I would trust that person more than I would trust the person that is like, without a doubt, I would take a bullet for this person.
Yeah.
And show no exception to the rule, right? Because it always just comes off as fake.
Last point. I want to know why you think my over empathy is a problem.
When I say problem, I don't mean big problem. I pretty much agree with you on the idea of nuisance. I mean like small problem, but I just like
get in the way kind of thing.
I think the word nuisance is the way of saying it's a small problem. And so that's why I was like, I'm willing to call it a problem, but I don't think it's a critical problem.
But I would almost agree that like, no, I would disagree that nuisance and problem aren't, with the way I'm using them, anywhere close to. There's no correlation between the two.
Yeah,
when I say nuisance, I mean it's like it's kind of annoying that I have to do this, that I want to do this, but at the same time, it's
like
kind of
a nuisance is like an itch, and a problem is like a gash.
Yeah, like it's not. I don't see it as a problem.
I think like you're not as obviously. I can sit down and do this shit with you, so it's nothing intolerable. But there are people I know that are so over empathetic or so oversensitive that I can't stand being around them because like I feel like I can't say something around them without them feeling like if I disagree with them on a point that they're going to take it the wrong way.
That's sensitivity, though.
Yeah, but it comes from.
That's where I think where you were saying like what you were comparing. You said something about empathy, and well, what you're saying now is like you have to watch what you say around that person. That's just an overly sensitive person. Their feelings get hurt easily, but empathy has everything to do with feeling for other people. Like. Empathy comes down to like what I call like the basic human connection of just like feeling for people.
Yeah. Okay. That is true. I would say that a more refined
Dude, super
idea
sensitive
of it.
people fucking are annoying as shit. I
Yeah.
will agree to that.
Yeah, I think. So okay, I think where it could be a problem is where the over empathy brings in your emotion and it clouds your judgment on something that you shouldn't be too emotional over, and where if you didn't have it, you would be able to make a more clear decision on something or act in a more like rational manner. So like if somebody did something to someone that you love, and you were like, yo, that's fucked up. And even the person was like, no, it wasn't that big of a deal. Like, we're just joking around. And you were like, nah, you can't do that shit.
No, see,
And so that's where I would think it would be a problem. But like I said, I don't think you're an extreme case. I think, like you said, like
I just wanted to clear that up because the way you said it was more of just like, it's a problem within you. And I'm like, we're going to visit back on this. Because
No. I didn't mean it in a sense of like, I was using the word problem as minor.
Okay.
Yeah. So it wasn't anything critical.
No, the over empathy part for like, if somebody bumps into someone else and the guys that are, well, no, that's just tough guys. But like, if you overreact to that, yes, that's an issue. But if the person that, let's say person A bumped into person B and they were both like, oh, excuse me, that was my bad. And person C goes, what the fuck?
Well, yeah. That's
first of all, that's
course,
extreme. Secondly,
case, yeah.
like, but I don't even know if that's considered empathy as much as overreaction.
I think I can think of an instance. So not like an actual case that happened, but just a hypothetical. Say somebody, like there's person A, B, and C, and you'll be person C in this case. Person A does something to person B, and person B is a little sensitive, not too crazy oversensitive where it's unbearing to be around them, but they are sensitive, and they are reacting in a almost woe is me way. And they're like super sad about something that happened, or they're like, they took something personal, and your over empathy could cause you to take their side on something where person A either mindlessly acted and did that, and all person B needs to hear is, you're being a bitch, like suck it up. It's not actually a big deal, and you're crying about it. But an over empathy could play in a role there where you're like, oh shit, like, like you're like, I feel for you. I'm sorry that happened. Like, maybe this person should, be more like thoughtful of what they're doing, or more anything like that. When in reality, like, it wasn't actually that big of a deal, and you just haven't heard from person A yet.
No, that's where you have to figure out the whole story. That's literally, that's like a whole different case. And that's like,
and that's where I say,
person,
like,
mindlessly did something, and then you just go to person B and take their side. That's not how it works. At least that's not how like my empathy works. My empathy just gets based off of like, if that person gets hurt, you can feel for them, but to be angry at the other person right away without knowing the full story is irresponsible and,
but what if you
illogical.
Like, what if person B is someone close to you and person A isn't someone that you really know, and you trust person B's judgment, but in reality, they're like actually being sensitive about something.
I've had that happen multiple times. I'm able to separate myself from those two. Back then I wasn't, but that's why when you asked me, is it able to improve? It has improved over the years.
Okay.
So like, that's why I guess I didn't clear that point up of, yeah, I think that can improve. It's no, I know it can improve because I've literally had it improved. Like, for example, some dude called some chick a bitch at school, and I was just like, yo, don't fucking call her a bitch. Like, just don't.
Yeah.
And he had to be the tough guy and wanted to fight.
Yeah.
He fucked up there. It doesn't matter. You don't need to start calling people names. And especially if you know what the fucking word bitch does to people, especially with women, like that's a disrespectful, like that is one of the most disrespectful ones to call a woman. It's like, for some reason, the most offensive one next to cunt.
I wouldn't even think it'd make top 3.
Twat, whatever else. But what I'm getting at is like, bitch is the one where people like that back in the day, not even now, like, guys will use that as you're just being a fucking bitch. Like, yeah, that's my point.
How it's presented.
So how it's presented, everybody knows what it means. So when you go and say that, like, you lose a fight instantly when you call somebody a name. Like, you've lost.
Exactly.
You got angry. You lost. So his whole tough guy thing was to just get in my face and try to fight me. I've explained this story to you.
You've explained it on the podcast.
I've explained it on the podcast. That is different from, he said this to me. Well, yeah, but what did you say before? But when you get called a name, when you start like really going for people, like there's
See, in like my situation, I wouldn't have even talked to the dude. Like I wouldn't have like texted him or anything like that. I just would have been like,
so if a dude walked up to Danny and was like, "You're a fucking bitch."
Okay, so this girl was like Danny to you?
This is not a girlfriend, but a very close friend. Yeah.
See, that's the difference.
Okay, if somebody
and you have to explain how the context went for you, and then apply that fairly to me.
No, it was like one of my closest friends in high school.
And what happened?
What
Like,
do you mean?
why did he call her a bitch?
I don't know. They were like not agreeing about something from what I remember. This is fucking high school. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
sure.
like the whole point was that they were like arguing and there was no name on the other side. Like she didn't, like his first thing was like, "You're a bitch." And then she followed up with like, "You're a dick." And I was like, "Hey, I think I remember saying like, don't have confrontation with that guy." And then I went to that guy and I was like, "Don't call her fucking bitch." I literally was like, separation of the two.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done that. Like, even if it was Danny and she was in a disagreement with someone and they called her a bitch, I'd be like, okay, they called you a bitch. Like, people are shitty. That's how people are. You have to be able to expect people to act like that. And it's not that big of a deal. They called you a name.
But if a dude, even if it was on Twitter, if a dude was like, "Hey, you're a fucking bitch."
If it was on Twitter, I would hop in for fun. But if Danny like came to me and she was like, "This dude called me a bitch and I'm upset about it," I'd be like, toughen your skin.
Gonna do anything about that?
No.
Why?
Why would I need to? Dude called her a bitch. Whoop de do. It's a name. It's not in my like necessities to go and then like cause further confrontation. People are gonna call people names, and that's how life works. Like I'm not in any position to then go like, "Hey, tough guy, you think you can, call my girlfriend a name when I'm not around?"
You don't have
and
to say
everything.
any of that. You just literally go and be like, "Dude, don't call my girlfriend a bitch." Like,
but I'm not gonna go teach this dude a lesson. Like I don't feel like I'm gonna like gain anything from telling her not to call her a bitch. Is he gonna listen to me? No. Is he gonna stop?
that is
No.
the most random take I've ever heard on it. Like, that's your own take. That's
like
fine.
I think Danny would agree with me, honestly.
Oh, that's fine. You guys can have that. I just find that like,
See, like, and that's the thing. Like my stance on it is, you got called a name. Like, it's not that big of a deal. I'm not gonna go find the dude and then go confront him about it. Like, I don't think there's a name that someone could call Joel. Well, actually, no. That's actually
was my
different.
next question.
Well, okay.
How is that different? It's coming for your friend.
Actually, no. You know what? If somebody said that, I still wouldn't go track this dude down and confront him about it. I wouldn't. I'd be like, that dude is fucked up and he's a piece of shit. But like, we'll leave it at that.
That is absolutely crazy to me.
I think it's crazy to go track him down and confront him.
I'm not saying track him down and confront him. I'm saying like
To text him and confront him.
Text him, Twitter, whatever. If they walked by in person and was just like, "Hey, Joel, you're a beep," it was just like. And you wouldn't say anything to that?
Okay, if like I'm saying, it depends on the context. If it's in person and it's right in front of me, obviously I'm getting involved. But if it's some confrontation where they're in a disagreement and the dude acts like a total piece of shit and I wasn't even there for it and it's, them having a disagreement, I'd be like, the dude's a piece of shit and he just proved that. But I don't need to go cause further involvement.
I'm more talking about in the moment kind of things. I'm not talking about stuff that happened days ago. Like otherwise you'd be spending days on Twitter.
That dude who called your friend a bitch, you weren't even there for that, right?
No, but it happened that day, and I just literally texted him. I said, "Hey,
yeah, even if it happened that day,
like, yo, all you have to do is like just not call her a bitch." I was like, "Just don't call her a bitch." I didn't say anything else. I just said, "Don't call her a bitch." It's part of our friend group. We're trying not to have problems. I'm just trying to squash it. Don't call her a bitch. And it was, "You fuck, tell me what to do." It's like, you're causing problems.
The dude was in the friend group.
Kind of. I tell you after this.
He's a mutual.
Yeah.
See,
you know who he is.
Regardless, like, I wouldn't go out of my way in something, one, I wasn't involved in, and two, was over a disagreement I wasn't even there for. Like, to go and then contact somebody for calling a friend of mine a name, even with Joel, even with the, untouchable word, like, I still wouldn't cause an even further problem. I would just be like, that guy's obviously like a piece of shit and we don't need to spend any more time on him.
I'm just mainly, like I said, I'm not saying like if Joel was like, "Oh, that day this guy, like 2 hours ago, this guy called me the N-word." It's like, I'm not going to go and hop on Twitter and go search for it and go say something, but I'm talking about if I was scrolling through Twitter and I just saw this conversation and it was like 10 minutes ago or an hour ago, like if I saw it, I'd just be like, "Yo, like you don't need to fucking, what is wrong with you?"
Yeah, but that's different. Again, you're witnessing it.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
And that's different from what your situation was.
Right, but I asked you, I said, if somebody called Danny a bitch, it doesn't matter when it happened. This is like, if a dude, like if it was a chick.
This is what I meant is you have to apply it fairly to the situation you were in.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, like I said, if it's in person, if I'm there for it, if I witness it,
Yes.
then I'm getting involved.
Okay.
Because I am there.
Right.
If I'm not, and it's there a disagreement that I was not present for, I'm not getting involved. And especially over a name. And so if I was in your shoes and I was friends with that girl and she came to me and said that.
What does have to be said in order for you to get involved if you're not there?
Unless it's a like physical threat for future violence, if it's just them calling names, there isn't a name that.
I'm not saying just a name. Like what if other things were said? Like personal things.
Give an example, I guess.
Attacking her family or like attacking personal qualities about her,
like physical appearance and stuff.
Yes, all those different things, like belittling her.
I think unless they went to something to where like it was like attacking past trauma, like Danny explained her story. If somebody was like attacking like her deceased family, then depending on how like the extreme they were, then I'd get involved.
I guess in my head it's like my brother, right? If somebody says something to him online, like he gets shit all the time, right? But it's just like I'm not going to go out of my way because he knows how to defend himself. And I'm not saying that like girls don't, I'm not saying that Danny doesn't, but like to certain extent it's like, sometimes you do have to chime in. Like I think it was Ethan, our friend, photographer.
Yeah.
There was another photographer, which I would name him. I don't give a fuck. I hate that dude, or dislike that dude. But he basically told him like, you're just trying to be tough out here or trying to act like you know photography. You don't know shit because he's another photographer and acts like he knows a shit ton. And he doesn't think his shit smells. And he was just going for no reason. Like,
he just saw Ethan trying and then came for his head.
And I was like, yo, what the fuck is up with you? Like, what for what? That's what I'm talking about, is like stuff like that. Like if Danny was like, my friends, if Danny was like, you're a dick, and this guy was like, you're a bitch. Well, Danny, you caused that yourself.
Well, like, even past that, even if it was a disagreement, and then he first was like, you're a bitch.
If she didn't say anything back, like if she held herself back, like if it's a disagreement, it's I think that you, like for me personally, that people need to be like your friends, your family, your loved ones, whoever, they need to be defended. That's how it is.
I definitely think so. And I don't think someone getting called a name is something you need to defend.
Agree to disagree.
Fair.
We said we were going to do shorter episodes and we totally didn't.
Yeah, we were planning on making our one-on-ones shorter, but still.
Episode 25.
Yeah, man. This was cool because
this was a different one.
This was totally different. A totally different style than what we usually go with. We went straight into politics. Yeah. We talked about economics.
And a lot less people chime in or tune into ours, our
one-on-one episodes. Yeah.
And it's like, fuck, this one was, I want to see like what people's thoughts are on this.
Yeah, this one was super, like a lot of disagreements.
Yeah.
And fucking love
a lot that I learned about you, and I can't wait till 26 is the last one. Just kidding. But I think that's what's cool about this is like, as far as like disagreements, it doesn't change the fact that we don't like. It's not.
Yeah, it doesn't change anything.
Yeah,
like
it really doesn't.
It's very like it's a fresh breath of air.
I still look at you. You're still beautiful.
Oh, thanks, babe.
You're still hot.
But it's a breath of fresh air to be able.
He called me babe.
Let me talk.
Oh, shit.
It's a breath of fresh air to be able to have a disagreement with somebody, and in the end be like, it's fine. Like it's totally cool.
It's nice.
Yeah, it's civil.
You can't fucking have these.
Exactly.
You really like it's okay. You can have these.
Yeah, but hey, I mean the bar's low, so why not take advantage of it right now, right? Like,
what do you mean?
The bar's low is in like people always disagree, and then it ends awfully, or they start calling each other names, or they're just like, I can't believe you're such a scum person. If the bar's that low right now and makes this easy civil disagreement look better, then I'll fucking take it.
Oh fuck yeah, any day.
Yeah, so this one was cool. I dug it.
Okay,
awesome.
So the whole point that we've explained in the beginning, and kind of in the middle made a joke about it, was that we're gonna start. Oh, fuck it! I'm just re-emphasizing what we said in the beginning.
We're trying to make our episodes shorter, or one-on-one episodes.
Because 2 a week, although we enjoy it and other people enjoy it, is a lot
of content.
It's a lot, especially when they're like all 2 to 3 hours long.
Yeah, and like we tell people, like you don't have to listen to everyone, but that doesn't stop people from wanting to listen to everyone.
Yeah.
And if you want to listen to everyone, but you can't because we put out a shit ton of content, then like, you know, it would be nicer to try to make them a little shorter and sweeter.
Yeah, especially because like at the point that we're at now, we're trying to keep people listening because like they're interested in it, but we don't want to overwhelm people. It's not like we're tending to everybody's wants and needs. Like by no means has anybody even said this to us. It was just our own decision of just like, well,
just judging the situation.
Slow it down a tiny bit.
Yeah,
and by slow it down, we mean this with the whole, well, this is just the same amount
yeah, but
of time.
this one, it was like we hit
different.
the hour mark and we just kept going. It was so
And
good. So
the other thing is like, if you know what, we're gonna wrap this up because we're gonna do it.
All I'm saying is like we're gonna try to cut it short when we can.
Yes.
But if it's good, it's gonna keep rolling.
Correct.
And so that's how it is. But we're gonna try to put a little bit more effort.
Before Hitler, I was gonna cut it.
Yeah.
We were at like
And then Hitler
50-something.
comes up, and then another hour of conversation opens up. But
shit.
and so like we're gonna put an effort to actually do it. And I think in past podcasts we probably have had opportunities to cut it short, but then we were like, what do you want to talk about now? And it's like an hour 15 in.
Yeah.
And so like
exactly that.
Even though we're 0 for 1, we won't be 0 for the entire time.
We'll just start it on 27. All right. Episode 25, everybody.
Thank you for listening, and we hope you guys like this different one.
Yeah, we'll see you on the next one.
Roll the outro.
Bye.